Hello, everyone. We are about to start our Images and Perceptions Diversity Conference for the 12th year in a row now. We're so pleased to have some amazing presenters. We have Sean Stone, straight from Hollywood, who's going to talk about his journey and his journey of faith. Very passionate and a very intelligent young man. Justice Richard Bernstein will be talking about the disabilities communities and how we need to face our challenges and accept those challenges and create them into triumphs. Martha Reeves, Motown's Martha Reeves, the legendary Martha Reeves, will be here talking about her struggle as an African American entertainer during the civil rights movement. The incomparable Clovis Maksoud, Dr. Ambassador Clovis Maksoud, came from Washington to speak to us today, and he will give us an inspiring message about unity and about nonviolence and about making peace. Michael Reyes is a hip-hop rapper who will talk to us about, again, nonviolence and talk to the youth about how they need to go forward and how they need to have acceptance of one another and to build on that acceptance rather than fearing the other person. Maxine Kane is an educator, ex-superintendent, and she's going to talk to us about how we need to be better, how we need to make the world better, and how we need to be inspirational for ourselves and love ourselves before we can love others. Commander David Robinson will be talking about community policing in a diverse community and will give us insight about positive policing and about the perspective on cross-cultural competency between our community and the police force. We have a wonderful program for you, and I hope you enjoy it. My name is Sihama Wada Jafer, and Images and Perceptions is my passion, and thank you to MEA for covering this event. I would like to ask a few people to please just stand up and be appreciated, especially by me. Maxine Kane, can you please stand up? David Robinson, please stand up. Shelley Horowitz, please stand up. Doris Hajj, please stand up. Lila Amen, Terry Ahwell, Edna Zaid, please all of you stand up for a moment. Thank you so much for everything that you've done and your support and really believing in this process. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To start off our afternoon, I want to introduce a lovely and exceptionally talented young woman who is a recording artist, who has graced the charts with her beautiful and elegant style and voice, here to sing a song that truly identifies our mission today. Please help me give a warm welcome to Ava, singing Imagine by John Lennon.
Thank you for having me today. Imagine all the people.
Do you know that song? You have to sing with me.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion too. Imagine all the people living in peace. And you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, no. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world, and you might say we are dreamers, but there's a room full here today. I hope someday they will join us, and the world will live as one. We'll live as one. We'll live as one. Thank you.
It's sort of all in the family because she is a cousin as well, and someone that I'm so proud of. Her recording career has just really skyrocketed, and we're very, very proud of her. And you know why. The voice is absolutely amazing. We had with us Mayor Jack O'Reilly, and Mayor Dan Paletko was with us earlier. Jack O'Reilly has a couple of wonderful keys to the city for Martha and for Sean, but he was unable to actually present them. So on behalf of the city, Martha and Sean, thank you for being here. And also, he does have something for each of our presenters. So thank you to the City of Dearborn, Jack O'Reilly, and Mayor Dan Paletko. Our next presenter, or should I say icon as well, has roots in Detroit and is often known as the Queen of Motown. She first started a singing career in Motown in the early 60s and is still entertaining audiences all over the world. Martha Reeves will share with us her epic journey as an African-American entertainer during the height of the Civil Rights Movement and send us on a journey of self-realization and evaluation. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, the incomparable love of my life, Martha Reeves.
Hello, everybody. Hello. For those of you who I've been sitting with and chatting with and enjoying this wonderful presentation, and all of you who I haven't had a chance to speak to personally, hello. Hello. I'm excited to be here, especially since I spent so much time with Sirham and her wonderful husband, Hassan. It's been great to just feel all the love that's here. I've been crying ever since the first presentation, especially after Alex spoke, because there are a lot of us who don't know what his age group is even thinking of doing. And it's good to know and to hear firsthand the trials and tribulations of just being a young man with good background, good upbringing, and common sense. I tell a lot of people that I speak for that if they don't get an education, they won't have common sense. They won't know how to count money. They won't know how to sign contracts. They don't know what it would take to be in show business or be successful in anything you want to achieve. I was coming out of the hotel today, the Dearborn Inn. I remember there was a time when we weren't allowing in there. Did you know that? Sihan, did you know there's a time when blacks weren't allowed in the Dearborn Inn? There was a time when we came here to perform in 1964, and they drove us here in the dead of night, and they snuck us into a building, and on the second level is where we performed 2 songs. We were hurriedly rushed out of there and rushed, for fear of our life, because it was a threat on us if we were caught in Dearborn. Did you know that? Oh, okay. I won't go there then. I represent a lot of things today, and I'm proud to say that not only did I just get my doctorate in humanities, but I also have my master's in religious studies. So I'm growing. I'm trying to become somebody. I want to be known. It's just a good spirit, given a job, a commission, and I do it the best I can. As Mom used to say, do the best you can at anything you do the first time, then you'll never be embarrassed or have to do it again. So that's one of the things that's my drive. Mom and Dad are in heaven, God rest their souls, but I represent a family of 12 children. Dad was the only supporter of the family. He worked for the Detroit City Water Department. And every time they would call him to fix a broken water main, he got up. He went, no matter what, whether he was sick or well or whatever time of day it was. And I think that's what love I had to submit myself to the scrutiny of politics to be on the Detroit City Council for 4 years between 2005 and 2009. Another career. I went there, though, mainly because I had prayed a prayer, the Jabez prayer, that says, bless me indeed, increase my territory, keep your hand on me, and keep me from evil that's not to do any harm. That took me to the Detroit City Council because it certainly increased my territory. He did keep his hands on me. I didn't go to jail. And they didn't catch me doing anything illegal, so I survived. I represent my family in a way as far as my talent is concerned because my grandfather was Methodist minister. I always wondered where the ministry would fall in the family, having 6 brothers and 4 sisters. I guess it fell on me, and I'm kind of proud because I do live a spirit-filled life. I do have a personal savior. I am led, and I don't have to worry about what I say or where I go or what I do because I have someone in my temple giving me directions and telling me what to do. So I'm free. I'm free, and I'm glad to make that statement. I remember not having, we've been eating a lot today. The food is excellent. Everything that I've tasted has been delicious. I like the style too because you can eat it hot or cold and it's still good, still got a flavor. And you know you're getting fiber and you know you're getting healthy. This is wonderful. We had portions in my family. No one ever got obese because you never had seconds. That's the life we lived. I remember the war when we had rations, so we had to go and get flour and sugar with stamps. The world has changed so much, and in my 73 years, I've seen about 7 changes. Like every 7 years, there's a change in my life and a new revelation. And being here with you and crying the whole time after hearing everybody speak, there were several times I had to restrain myself from getting them and saying, "That's right." Say it again. Especially when our lovely doctor spoke. Trying to get everything in because I didn't have a presentation. I didn't have a slide to talk from points, but just to let you know that I represent a group of entertainers who left Detroit on a 93 one-nighter tour. All of us had, from meager means, a man named Berry Gordy, whose house was turned into a studio, put us all on a bus at the demand of Thomas Beans Bowles, who was one of the Funk Brothers, one of the baritone saxophone flute players. He had worked with Bill Doggett. Some of you might know the names I'm calling, but I'm from the old school, so go with me. Bill Doggett had told him that putting us all on a bus with a 12-piece orchestra and riding all over the United States, that we would eventually become famous, and it worked. There were 2 hotel visits in those 3 months, 94 one-nighters, 3 months of your life, November, December, and January. And the Holiday Inn was the only people who would let us, only chain who would let us stay in their hotels. The rest of the time, we rode the bus. We would take showers and try to clean up in some of the arenas we played in. And I want to bring to mind one of the particular engagements where this was during the time that we had a governor who would tell people they could hit, it was all right to hit black people in the head with axe handles. His name was Maddox, Lester Maddox. And he could tell them it was okay when you saw any blacks doing anything, you could hit them in the head with axe hammers. Well, we're on stage, I think it was Montgomery, Alabama. And I love the fact that there are 2 flags in here. Well, they were over there, an American flag, and there was a Confederate flag on this side. They had some black men in some striped suits cleaning up the stables because at that time, policemen rode more on horses than they did in police cars. And Smokey Robinson was the star of the show. He had a hit record called Mickey's Monkey. So at the end of the show, there was always a finale. And Smokey, before he started his set, after everybody had done their 2 numbers, he said to the people, he said, hey, you 2 guys with those sawed-off baseball bats, step to the side. We want you to go away because this is fun music. Nobody's going to get hurt or no fights. We just want to dance and have a good time. And they listened to him. They actually disregarded the fact that it was their custom, just like our commander told us a while ago, policemen are programmed to be peacekeepers. They have a job, and their duty and their oath is to protect and serve and to keep the peace. But these 2 gentlemen were not policemen. They were just some hired thugs who had sawed-off baseball bats who would hit anybody, no matter what color they were, if they got up and tried to dance, because they figured dancing would cause an uproar or disturbance. Smokey said, move back. Don't move. Don't hit another person in the head with those clubs. Embarrassed them to the fact where they actually stepped back, and the barrier that was between the white side and the black side, it was difficult performing that way because you didn't know where to look. You know? And Mama never taught us hate. The only person we hated was the white insurance collector, because she'd tell him that, tell him Mama ain't home. And we'd go to the door and said, Mama said she ain't home. Now, that's the only person we learned to actually dislike. Everybody else we loved, because we all messed up. Her grandmother was white. My grandfather was a Blackfoot Indian. My dad was a Geechee from South Carolina. We all messed up. So how are you going to be prejudiced if you're mixed with a whole lot of things? You know, so she never taught us to hate. And we loved one another. Of course, living in a house with 14, well, I got to count the dogs and the cats. Because we always had a lot of animals. Being from the South, I'm from Eufaula, Alabama. My family came to Detroit when I was 11 months old. I lost my Southern accent at Lee Strasberg's Theater Institute. But then if I ever go south, it comes right back. But, you know, people make fun of your accents, and I kind of got tired of that. But then when I went to England, I realized it's okay to have an accent. But all that to say, when Smokey made that big difference, and when we stopped the show, people were up in the aisle. They had broken down the barrier. They were hugging and kissing and giving each other 5. Everybody enjoyed the music. The music was about love. It was about getting along. It was about relationships. And that's what I love the Motown sound for, because it's all about relationships. They don't tell you to kill the po-po. They don't tell you to hate your parents or kick the dog. You know, they tell you good things. My girl, my guy, Smokey Robinson, oh yeah, he's my mentor. But he stopped a whole lot of things. The next gig, the next night, mind you, there was no barrier. It took just that one person to speak out to say, hey, we're having a good time. It's music and not war. Let's have a good time. So they gave me a song called Dancing in the Street. I first saw Marvin Gaye sing it, right? He was in the studio. I used to follow Marvin around. It didn't matter that he married Barry's sister. I liked him anyway. He was fine and could sing and play all the instruments. Most of the music you hear produced by Marvin Gaye, he actually did all of the drumming and all of the keyboard and all the rhythms in those songs. That's how talented he was. And he was so good looking. Ooh. And I still have that same affection for him. We sang behind him on his first 3 records, Stubborn Kind of Fella, Hitchhiking, Pride and Joy. Motown was that kind of company. Music made 24 hours a day. I'm glad to be a Motown artist, and I know that Motown needs more significance in the city of Detroit as far as memorability is concerned. And while I was on city council, I did mention the fact that needs statues and plaques of the Motown artists, because we're just as important to Detroit as Henry Ford. This is important. And I'm educated coming here because you said this is Henry Ford town. Some of the little houses I saw over there, I said they built them just for the people that migrated here to work at the factory. Is that true? Oh, okay. We stayed in Detroit, but Dad worked for Bud Wheeler, who made the wheels, and also worked for Henry Ford before he got a job with the city. When he got the job with the city, he thought he was in. Anyway, representing that company and having a song like Dancing in the Street, well, Marvin was singing it when I first heard it. Calling out around the world, are you ready for a brand new beat, baby? Singing it like he was singing to a girl. So I'm standing there looking at him and oogling and saying, oh yeah. And he said, hey man, let's try this song on Martha. to my surprise, I didn't even know he knew I was in the room. You know, I was thrilled just to hear him call my name. And they gave me the song, so I sang it the way I felt it. I remembered having the streets blocked off because Dad worked for the city. He could get the police to put those horses up in that yellow tape. And we had cobblestone streets, so it wasn't easy to dance on, but everybody put their record players, not woofers and tweeters, record players on their front porches, and they fed the neighborhood. They even killed a goat one time. I didn't eat that goat, okay? They hung him upside down, and it was a neighborhood thing where they cut his throat and, oh, God, and cooked him, and the whole neighborhood had barbecued goat. It was wonderful. That's the kind of neighborhood I grew up in, where the neighbors would beat you up if your parents weren't home, and then bring you home, and your parents would beat you again. It was like a neighborhood thing. And a diverse neighborhood. We had everybody in our neighborhood, every race you could think of was in on Riotville. Well, the Pepsi-Cola, Pepsi Bottling Company is where I grew up, right there in Detroit, Russell and Mac. Just a lifetime of relationships, lifetime of going to the South every summer and watching how people were treated down there, and going to a store one day and was told I couldn't go back because the men wanted me to say yes sir and no sir, and I couldn't do that because I had an education. I said yes sir, no sir, yes sir, no sir, please. He didn't like that. I was supposed to say yes sir, yes sir. Oh, relationships have really changed. And I used to have a prayer that all those people who taught their kids how to hate, I hope all of them wind up in a big barbecue. You know the one I'm talking about, right? The eternal burning. The ones that taught their kids to hate, because we didn't grow up like that. And some of them are still living. Some of those people that taught their kids hate from the crib. How to hate from the crib. Anyway, it's a good thing to be here. I have been excited about coming to the conference, and thanks to Sahan, Sahan gave me another chance. I wasn't here last year. But in all of this enthusiasm and all these awards we've gotten, I want to say how thankful I am to you. And to know that diversity there's a work going on, and it's here in our hearts, and we got to continue. I do have one issue that I wanted to bring up. It's not on the program. Oh yeah, by the way, we did the first music video going through the Ford Motor Company. No, we didn't get paid. But Murray Kaufman came from New York, and he decided that he'd ask Henry Ford if we could go through there. And you actually saw a car being built underneath us. They were putting on they got a lot of machines now that do what those men were doing. And a few of them cursed at us and tried to trip us with those hoses. But we got through there and did that video at 7 o'clock in the morning, the morning shift. So we did the first music video in history. And the second video you saw, thank you. The second video you saw, there was some men trying to play the Motown sound. It was a little slower, and it wasn't quite the drum beats and the bass lines that those jazz musicians played behind us. The Funk Brothers never traveled with us. They played everybody's music different. My music doesn't sound like the Supremes. Doesn't sound like Stevie Wonder's or the Temptations either. Doesn't sound like the Miracles. Our music has a style of its own, and those musicians, genius musicians, were genius enough to make a difference in our music. I want to part with saying that I want to be a part of this organization. I got my awards. I'm going to get me 3 frames and put them in there. And be glad to see you again and again and again, and hope you're on the road to ending prejudice, racism, all those ugly things, and spread good. We're not paid when they play our music on the radio. Artists haven't been paid yet. We have 3 countries in America, in the world, that don't pay their artists when their music is played. South Korea, Iran, and America. So I want to sing this song. I hope I can. Give me strength. America, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. God bless you. Thank you.
On behalf of the City of Dearborn and Mayor Guido, the key to the city. Oh, Mayor O'Reilly, where did that come from? Mayor O'Reilly.
Honorable Richard Bernstein, see what we did? See what we did?
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, baby. Also, I wanted to mention that Paul Abate and Bushra are here today from the FBI. Thank you very much for your support and for being here. Bushra, Alawi, yes. Very proud of you, young lady, very proud of you. Also, two more things. My husband, thanks, honey, for everything you do. You're amazing. My daughter, who's been receiving all my texts all night and running around, Gina Jafer. And Gina's future in-laws are here, Norma and Rajai Kakish. Family. My sister and her husband are here also, Andrea and Fuad. Thank you for being here. Our next presenter comes from a background of grassroots integrity, defender of social justice, and whose voice resonates through civil rights and human rights initiatives across the nation. He's a tireless advocate for the rights of the physically challenged and provides a voice to those who would otherwise be forced to be silent. He's committed to taking action. Justice Richard Bernstein is a justice on the Michigan Supreme Court and was sworn in on January 1st, 2015. That deserves a round of applause. Justice Bernstein is a staunch believer in blind justice for all and works tirelessly to make sure that our judicial system is fair to everyone, to you and to me and to everyone sitting around you, and to those with special challenges. Justice Bernstein has committed to ensure that their voice is heard and their needs are met. A friend to all and an amazing human being, Justice Richard Bernstein, to the stage.
Thank you to each and every one of you. But may God bless each and every one of you. May He bless the work that you do. May He bless the journey that you're on. May He continue to bless the most magnificent difference that you have had a chance to make. I believe that today is a celebration. It is a celebration for us to look at how far we have come. Today is a day that we look forward, for there is no question that there are challenges that lie in front of us. There is no question that there are difficulties that we must have to honor. But today we must celebrate. We must celebrate the work that has been done. We must celebrate the impact that has been made. We must celebrate the effect that all of you have had on our community, on our neighbors, and on our society. For today, we must celebrate where we are. We must celebrate what we have achieved, and we must celebrate what has already been done. Today is a day that we come to realize and recognize the idea that extraordinary things can, will, and must happen for each and every one of us. Because everybody in this room has been given the greatest blessing that our Creator could hope to bestow. We have been given the blessing of life experience. And it is experiences of life that make us who we are. It is our experiences that define us. I always remember my first case as a young trial lawyer, and I went to visit a veteran trial attorney. And I remember talking to him about my case and talking to him about my clients. And he said to me, "Richard, that's great. You've told me who your clients are. You've told me what they want. You've told me what they're fighting for. But Richard, what is their story? Who are they? Share with me their story. The beauty of a luncheon like this is that we come together through those stories, through those set of life experiences. It is our stories that make us who we are. It is our stories that interpret the world. It is our stories that allow for each and every one of us to know and find our place in the world that we live in. I always remember awakening at Mount Sinai Hospital after having gone through a catastrophic injury. I remember awakening in horrific pain as I lied in the emergency room. And I've come to realize that God will always send certain people to you at just the right time and at just the right moment and at just the right place. And I remember a wonderful man coming to my bedside. And I remember him helping me to realize something fundamentally important. I remember him helping me to understand that other than the choice that we as humans make as it pertains to the power that exists between forces of good versus evil, that everything else that happens in our lives, that everything else that happens to us has been set forth, has been inscribed, and has been placed and etched in the great book of life. But the one great choice that we as humans have is how do we choose to react to the lives that God has chosen for us? How do we choose to react to the lives that we have been blessed with? How do we choose to react to the lives that we have been chosen to live? You come to realize that it is those who know hardship, it is those who know challenge. It is those who know struggle. It is those who know difficulty who come to realize that an easy life is not always a good one. It is through that struggle, through that challenge, through that difficulty that we come to understand and appreciate and recognize our place in the world. We come to realize our reason for creation. We come to realize why we are here, what God has in store for us. We come to realize that those who walk among us that are different, that might appear to be infirmed or weak or struggling in the body, have spirits that soar, have spirits that elevate, have spirits that shine, have spirits that can transcend. Yes, those who appear to be the weakest are often the strongest in spirit, in guidance, in passion. Those who know hardship and pain come to understand compassion. They come to understand warmth. They come to understand empathy. And it's through those gifts they come to understand our Creator. For they come to have the truest form of connection that one could ever hope to have. I remember getting a call one morning back when I practiced law. I like to say that because it makes me sound old, but it was a couple months ago that I was still practicing law. But this was as I began the practice of law many years ago. A mother called me. And she asked the question that all of us in this room have always wanted to answer and are always pondering. She wanted to know why it was that she could be such a good person, kind person, pious person, righteous person, moral person. She wanted to know why it was that of all people, God would give her a child with severe disabilities. Why, of all people, would she have a special needs child? She asked the essential questions. What kind of a life is her child going to have? Is he ever going to have any friends? Will he ever go to school? Do you think he'll ever have a job? Do you think that maybe he'll get married and have a family? Do you think he'll ever be independent? Will there be anything about my child that will be remotely ordinary? What will happen to my child when I die? I remember answering her question by thinking back to the biblical question. to the question that was posed in the book of Job, which is, why is it that if God is so merciful, if God is so compassionate, if God is so warm, if God is so understanding, why is it that he allows for bad things to happen to otherwise such good people? Why is it that there are some who walk among us that have to know a greater hardship, a greater struggle, a greater difficulty than others can possibly even begin to imagine or even begin to remotely understand? It's interesting. You come to realize when you ponder those types of questions that those who choose to believe, as those in this room have obviously chosen, to simply believe that you're part of something bigger, you're part of something grander, you're part of something more noble than you can possibly understand or even begin to appreciate. But if you have to believe that you're part of something bigger than yourself. Now, I've had the blessing of having the opportunity to have completed 18 marathons. And I believe that athletics represents life at its core and life at its essence. I've been blessed to have had the opportunity to have completed a full Ironman competition. For those of you who are unfamiliar, an Ironman is a 2.4-mile swim followed by a 112-mile bike to be completed by a 26.2-mile run. The rules of the competition are quite simple. Thank you. If you stop, if you rest, if you take a break during this competition, you will miss a cutoff. If a cutoff is missed, you will be immediately disqualified from the race. 2 years of work, effort, and training will be for naught. If you finish at 12:05 and not 12 o'clock, it's like you were never even there. I want you to imagine, if you would, the feeling you would have as you dive into a frigid body of water. The water temperature that morning in Lake Coeur d'Alene was 55 degrees. Now, I want you to further imagine how it would feel to be swimming in darkness. You don't have any idea where you started. You don't have any idea where you're going. But most terrifyingly, you don't have any idea where you are. You're unable to communicate with your guide because you're underwater and so is he. The rope that extends around your waist and around his is your only form of communication, in that when he tugs at the rope, you know which way to travel. As you swim, you repeatedly get kicked over and over again in the face. And being blind, you're unable to brace for the ensuing impact. You try to surface, but it's impossible because there's other swimmers immediately above you. And lastly, other people become entangled in the rope that connects you to your guide. And as they become entangled, the rope becomes ensnared. And as the rope becomes ensnared, it starts to drag you below the surface. Now, you try to get your head above the water, but waves will keep coming and crashing down upon you. You try to get that oxygen, but the more you try, the more difficult it becomes. You start to feel a drowning sensation as you begin getting pulled under because of the panic of the person who's entangled between you and your guide. Athletics is like life. Athletics is our spirit. Athletics is our journey. Because you come to find at those moments, at those times, that no matter how challenging or difficult or painful things get, you come to find that God will always give you what you need when you need it. He won't ever give you anything more, but I promise you, he will never give you anything less. Athletics is life. Life at its core and life at its essence. It represents the journey that we're all on. It represents what we are fighting for, what we're about. It represents everything that is us. Why is it that bad things happen to good people? And why is it that there are some people who have to know a greater struggle and hardship than others? It was a beautiful day in New York Central Park. I was walking in the pedestrian lane. I was getting ready for, at that time, would be my 18th marathon. As I was walking in the pedestrian lane that encompasses Central Park, a bicyclist was traveling at over 35 miles per hour. This according to the New York Police Department. And as the cyclist was going at such a high rate of speed, he lost control of his bicycle, and in doing so veered into the pedestrian lane where I was walking and struck me directly in the back. It is at those moments that we ask the question, the eternal question that we posed at the beginning: why do bad things happen to good people? Why would our Creator take someone who used athletics to find their voice, to use athletics to find their identity, to find their strength, to determine and discover who they are? Why would our Creator strike them down, make them have to live at Mount Sinai Hospital for over 10 weeks, not allow for those simple, basic things of life to be able to be lived the way that you once lived them, not giving you the chance to use the bathroom or take a shower, having to have nurses reposition you every 5 to 15 minutes, having to make you writhe in pain that's difficult to even begin to understand? Why would such things happen? Why? You come to celebrate, as you all celebrate in your lives through the journey that you're on. You come to celebrate the simple things in life, the things that matter, that which is meaningful. When people would come to visit me, I would always ask them, what are you going to do next? And they would tell me, I'm going to go to the dry cleaners, or I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to go for dinner. And I would ask them to savor that. I would ask them, do you know how that feels to feel fresh air, or to ride in a taxi, or go on a subway? What is it like to be at a restaurant with other people, to hear the clanking of glasses and silver, to taste the food and smell all the wonderful aromas? How does it feel to be a part of the world? You celebrate those simple things. Why do bad things happen to good people? It is times like at Mount Sinai when your team comes to you and says, there is no question that this is unfair. There is no question that this is unjust. There is no question that this shouldn't have happened. But at the end of the day, it's your life. It's what you want to do with it. We don't get to choose the lives that we have, but we do get to choose how we want to live them. And you start celebrating those small victories. You celebrate the idea that you can sit up in bed. You celebrate the idea that you can get out of bed with a nurse's help. You celebrate the idea that you can start using a walker. You celebrate the idea that you can make it across your room. You celebrate the idea that you can find your way to the nurse's station. You celebrate the idea that you can make it to the end of your ward. It was a year ago, and it was time for the New York City Marathon. This would be Marathon 18, but it would be the first marathon after a catastrophic incident. It would be the first marathon having to attempt to run it on a shattered hip and a crushed pelvis. It would be painful, it would be difficult, but it was something that had to be done. I remember as we ran through the streets of New York, crossed over the 59th Street Bridge, veered onto First Avenue at mile 18, the pain became so significant in that we were running this marathon with such horrible injuries. You learn how to live with pain. You learn how to deal with it. You learn how to work with it. But when you're fighting that kind of a pain, your body will attempt to get you to lose consciousness so as to get you to stop running. Your body will do anything and everything in its power to get you to simply stop. It's at that time that you lift your head to the heavens and you call upon the Creator and you ask Him to give you the strength to simply finish, to cross the line. And those are the most significant times in life because something remarkable happens. That's when you find and make your peace with your new life, your peace with your new body, your peace with your new circumstance, your peace with your new situation, but ultimately you find your peace with God. In closing, why do bad things happen to good people? And why do some know a greater challenge and hardship than others? I believe it's because our Creator does not want us to devote our time and effort to trying to get over it. He wants us to focus on simply just getting on with it. He wants us to focus on the idea that we can do what is hard to achieve what is great. But most importantly, we're here to celebrate life. life as a novel, life as art. And within such a great creation, we must celebrate the good with the bad. We celebrate the chapters of heartache, pain, struggle, difficulty, and setback. For it is through those chapters that we come to know and appreciate hope, optimism, joy, and ultimately triumph. We celebrate life. Life at its core, life at its essence, and life at its very meaning. We come to celebrate the idea which brings us all here today. The idea, the notion, the belief that extraordinary things can, will, and must happen for us all.
Thank you, Justice Bernstein. You're an inspiration to us all. I don't believe those law briefs and Supreme Court cases could be in better hands. You are a treasure, and thank you for your incredible energy. Through poetry, we find our inner being, and we define that plateau that is truly beyond the obvious, with an accent on combining elements, things, emotions, inanimate objects to design a vision that flirts with our imagination and travels beyond our surface of thought. Our next presenter has been intriguing audiences across the nation with his poetry, with his message of justice, diversity, equality, and nonviolence. He's a hip-hop rap artist. I'm so proud of saying that. He's a hip-hop rap artist. And yes, I said rap artist. Michael has a talent that is engaging and connecting. Please welcome poet, hip-hop, and rap artist Michael Reyes to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Reyes. I'm a spoken word artist, poet, sometimes hip-hop artist. I'm on tour about 150 days out of the year. But today, I get to talk a little bit, I guess, about being Latino and about kind of diversity and how that connects to all of the different topics and themes that have been going on. And so for me, I identify as a Chicano, as a Mexicano, as a Latino, and as a person of color underneath the rubric of race that has been created in the United States. And I identify in those spaces because it allows me to be in solidarity with different groups. And solidarity, not charity. There's a difference, right? And so for me, I stand in that struggle, in that history, whether it be someone like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, at any rate, and then on down the line to these young kids that are the dreamers today, the folks that are fighting for justice, the folks that are fighting for Michael Brown, Renisha McBride. And so I stand in that tradition as a poet and as an artist. It was interesting yesterday we were talking about the role of poets, in particular in the Arab world, and kind of how poets are redeemed and looked at and esteemed. And for me, I follow kind of in that tradition as well, to be able to share thoughts and ideas. And it's always good to kind of be in a space where people are willing to listen to you as well as an artist. So I want to make sure that, you know, poetry and art is a reciprocal process. And what happens is the energy I give you is going to feed me on the energy that you give back. And so has anyone ever been to an open mic before or seen poetry and stuff? Yeah, okay, good. So a lot of times if you go, you know, you're allowed like, you know, technically one poem and you go up and read your piece. But you always got like a poet that goes up and says, I got 3 poems to read. And this poem started when I was 2 and it ended when I was 57. And by the time they done with those long ass poems, you like, damn. So I don't want to be that poet. So as long as there's energy in the space, I'm gonna give it back, and I'm gonna time my. Can somebody give me like a 2-minute warning out there, just like 2 minutes, because I talk a lot, so that's the problem. So what I want to do really quickly is I want to do an improv piece together. I want to create a poem together, and I want to put all this into the gumbo and see what we create. Now this poem could be a very righteous poem, but it could also be a very ratchet poem. It depends on what side. If you're under 25 and you know what ratchet is, just look to somebody under 25 and they'll let you know. Or look it up on Urban Dictionary. I think it's updated. So what I would like to do is I would like to get like 15 words from the audience, and whatever words you give me is the direction the poem will be. So it could be really, something that's on your mind from some of the things that you saw. It could just be something that you was running late. Maybe you were late here like I was today, So let's see. Let's start. Anybody? Egg. What do you say? Love. Peace. Motown. And what was over there? Patience. Patience as in patient or patience as in I'm patient? Either one. Popcorn. Vision. Oh, vision. Got it. Vision. Passion. Hold on. You guys are going too fast for me. Detroit. Diversity. Or how are you going to spell check Detroit? That's messed up. Diversity. All right, let's do like 4 more. Racism. Exceptional. All right. I like this room because it gives me words fast. Sometimes I'll be up here and they're like, joy, exceptional. So we had racism, exceptional, joy. What was else? Hope, and one more. Ray. Oh, my own name? Oh, my goodness. All right. So what we going to end it with? The end. All right, there we go. The end. All right, we got it. The end. All right, so let's see. I really don't know how good this poem will be or how bad it will be. But we got egg, love, peace, Motown, patience, popcorn, vision, passion, Detroit, diversity, racism, exceptional, joy, hope. Then it got me, Reyes, you know what I'm saying? And the end. All right, here we go. So I'm not really sure what direction this is going, so you have to excuse me. I write poems for the mind to transform time. They say eggs, whip them up, eat them in the morning for breakfast, but I use my soul to spit spirit to those who don't see anymore. I write poems for those who go to war, but not for the war, for oppression. I use it as a blessing, use it as a lesson, because I fight for love and peace. Unity in my community, but not just more to speech. I'm talking about the type of unity that allow my people to get a mortgage and buy a home. Because I try to use this mind and pen to fight in Rome, but not like Roman soldiers that roam to fight against war. I stand for something in front of a mic stand. I stand to represent for my people, mi gente. We listen to Motown beats, spit the blues into jazz and spit it back and reverb it into J Dilla. Poetry, hip hop poems that rap on the beat. Well, when I do it now, I'll show you how we rock from the streets of Detroit. Not just Detroit Rock City, because Detroit is more than just Eminem, you see. We spit these poems deep within the village like slum, sitting back, slum village. Spit these flows like an awkward theory. Sometimes we work it out. I spit and turn around. Who listens to the sound? I do my thing right now. I listen because we fight against things like colonialism and racism. It's an exception to see when we spit poems back and forth. I spit for joy, but not just the joy of my own life. I spit for those who die at the end of a gun and a knife, because where we see it spark in the night, I use my mind. I fight for hope for those that cannot see the truth before them. I fight for those people that they are not going to get their water turned off tonight. We fight for those people like Mike Brown, Renisha McBride, and Make the Tie underneath the ground. We hear it from the sound. I fight for those because diversity is more than just what you see on the visual. Deep within the soul, I use my poem. They call me Reyes, that means kings where I'm from. Sometimes we do it like this. You can see the poem bend. Just a little bit of freestyle poetry. The end. So, thank you. Thank you. So now I'm going to time myself now, you know what I'm saying? So you never really know where that's going to go, but hopefully so. I use poetry as a weapon and as a tool. For me, it's in a way to engage in critical thought and to think deeper about some of these kind of themes that we've been talking about today. First off, it's an honor to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And you always feel like, a lot of times I'm the feature at the presentation, so like I'm what people's waiting for, and then it's always awesome to be with people that you're in awe of. I'm sitting in the back like, oh my God, like there's like so many great people here. Then you start getting nervous, you want to do really good, and then it's just the natural feeling. Then you go in the back behind the curtain and start practicing, like damn. So for me, it's such an honor to be here, spending time with Martha, and spending time with Sean yesterday, and then with Siam. Where's she at? I don't know where she was. Over here. It's been such a great experience. I was born in Saginaw, Michigan, and I left to pursue kind of a career in art and activism, and I ended up in Chicago in the Northwest Side in Humboldt Park, and I basically spent 14 years there. And then I saw this great spark in Detroit, and I ended up moving back to Detroit just in January, and it's been really great because there's such a beauty within this ugliness. As artists and as creatives, our responsibility often is to take what you see ugly, remix it, and put it back out and make it beautiful. And there's so many people on the ground in Detroit that are fighting to stay in Detroit. in the midst of gentrification, in the midst of water shutoffs, in the midst of violence, in the midst of all of these things, there are people saying we are here and we want to stay. And so I fight for that kind of tradition. And as a Latino, it's interesting because one thing about being Latino is like, we'll sleep with anybody. Don't be so serious. It's the afternoon already. The morning left. Don't be so serious. So what I mean by that is that we are cosmic people. As a Latino, I'm mixed with everything. Right? If we look at the history of being Latino, I'm mixed with everything. Whether it's the African influence within my culture in the Caribbean, whether it's in Veracruz in Mexico and it's within me, that's a part of me. Whether it's the indigenous that were here already, right? Today we stand in the line of the Ojibwe. It's a part of me. Whether we're in a process of creating these ideas about what it means to be Latino. And for me, also, we look at back to like the Arab root within my language. There's 4,000 Spanish words that I have an Arab root because of the North Africans and the Arabs that occupied Spain. And so for me, it's a part of me. All of those things make me who I am. So I'm going to give away some gifts, and I'm going to spit one more poem. Is that cool? Do I have enough time? All right, cool. All right, cool. So, in my culture, when you show up, you give gifts. Other cultures, they steal stuff, It's too early. 500 years isn't enough. Sorry, I don't know. Land, labor, So I want to give away some CDs. It's hard for me because the later the show, the more ratchet the show gets. Like some people will see me at a conference and they'll bring their grandmother to like a nighttime show. It is not a good idea to bring your grandmother to a nighttime show. So I want to give away some CDs. So the deal is I'll throw these CDs out, but you have to like pick them up. I'm just gonna toss them like really good. But if it hit the ground, you gotta you can't just leave it there because sometimes people just look at it like. High school students are the worst. They do that to me all the time. I ain't picking that up. So anyway, here, what I'll do is I'll just if you this way. This way. Oh wait. Oh. I don't think I can make it there. It made it. Oh. All right. I'll give this one out like in hand, and then I got a T-shirt of Malcolm X that I made. So I'd like to give this out. I made these, so All right. Who wants that one? I'll give it this way. All right. So I'm gonna do a poem. Thank you. All right. So I'm gonna do this last piece. I'll do this last piece so we can stay on schedule and I'll be respectful of other people's time. One thing, if you do like my work, you can always go to hashtag just Reyes Poetry, ReyesPoetry.com. I also have business cards. I'm going to be staying till the end of the conference if you want to build, if you want to talk, if you want to get an album, you could do that as well. But this last piece I'm going to do is called Response to Those Who Say, Let's Take It Back to the Good Old Days. And I wrote this piece while working in Upward Bound. Anybody know the program Upward Bound? So if you know the program Upward Bound, you ghetto. You know what I'm saying? Like me, that's how I was. I came up in Upward Bound. I'll explain ghetto in my next set. But without ghetto, you wouldn't have Langston Hughes or the Blues or the Harlem Renaissance. So I use it in a positive way. Don't judge me. So this next piece, there was a time in history where we used to wear our pants all the way down to here. Thank God that doesn't happen anymore. So I was in a mall and this woman was really upset with some of my kids from the Upward Bound program in Wayne State. And she said, in the good old days, people didn't think this way. And so I started thinking about the perception of the good old days. I know the Republicans tend to have this idea that we just need to go back to the old America, like in the 50s. And I'm like, for who? Because people was hanging from trees in the 50s. And I don't really want to go back. Martha's talked about that a little bit where they couldn't even get into the hotel. And then now she's like an honored guest there today. It's really interesting, that juxtaposition. So I'll spit this poem. If you like what you hear, man, just holler at me, talk to me. You know what I'm saying? It's like being with a group of friends today. So here we go. Yeah, there you go. Let's take it back to the good old days. Let's take it back to when niggas and spics knew their place, when chicks would line up and put into camps, when women of color were fast whores and tramps, when Hoover bugged at the king for pressing microphones in his hotel lamps. Let's take it back to when the CIA placed hundreds of Cubans on a certain bay and then let them be slain and say, oh, we had nothing to do with it. It was what they wanted. Let's take it back to commie sympathizer witch hunts. Let's take it back to blacklists. Let's take it back to government control, segregation because of pigmentation. Let's take it back to the control of an island's population through sterilization. Let's take it back to when bullets flew, when Kennedy's brain was splattered, when Dr. King's skull was open. happened when Brother Malcolm sold up because of conspiracies buried in files and codes. Let's take it back to small black children being sprayed on the streets of the U.S., attacked by dogs, spit on like Christ was by bigots. Let's take it back to chemical insecticides used to grow healthy crops that affected my family, my uncles, my tias who worked for under minimum wage as slaves that labor in the sun to be infected by cancer. Let's take it back to the Zoot Suit riots where America's Navy raped our women, beat our men all in the name of defense. Let's take it back to when the only face of beauty was white, when Latino actors are forced to say they were Italian, when mixed mulatto children said they were not black. Let's take it back to when the only act on the big screen that depicted people of color was of sex, violence, and ignorance. Let's take it back to when Bruce Lee was forced to wear a mask because of his slanted eyes and millions it out to the Green Hornet. Let's take it back to when blacks could not play in the NBA, before Iverson, before Jordan, before Zeke, before Magic, before Dr. J, before the Iceman, Wilt, and Russell. Let's take it back to the good old days when millions of Americans went overseas to fight in wars, only to return in body bags, and because they were not white, could not be buried in the cemeteries that they died to keep. Let's take it back to when the government introduced the heroin on the streets of Harlem, Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit. Let's take it back to when jazz was monkey music, back to blackface, Uncle Tom, yes, master mentalities. Let's take it back to when masters raped slaves, when Thomas Jefferson had a love affair with one of his own. Let's take it back to cowards hiding behind sheets, setting crosses ablaze. Let's take it back to governmental testing our minorities to the outcome of AIDS. Let's take it back to the Treaty of Guadalupe, 40 acres and a mule. Let's take it back to the red man being infected by smallpox from blankets given to him by the U.S. of A. Let's take it back to the no question reality dogma of the age. Let's take it back to women are worth nothing, unable to vote. Baby, making cooking tortillas and greens is later as I bust time and time again. Let's take it back to Vietnam when men and women bled and bled and bled. That's why when I hear people say let's take it back to the good old days, I say, fuck that. No way the good old days weren't as good as they say. So thank y'all very much. That's my time. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow, that was amazing. You know, I think through rap, I'm always harping on Alex, you know, rap. But when you have a young man who uses it for messages and just presents it the way he does, I'm all for rap, I guess. Thank you, Michael, for sharing your talent and your words. Good luck with your message, your obvious passion. And again, Michael does present at schools as well, so put that bug in your ear. We've truly witnessed a direction as a platform for creativity and innovativeness, demonstrating the collective similarities and variations to culture and society in general. These ongoing efforts are what will bridge the seemingly endless divide that has been nourished by lack of tolerance and lack of information. I'm honored and proud to introduce our special guest this afternoon. The thing you've been waiting for. He is passionate and compassionate and truly committed to the concept of inclusion and diversity. He's not only the son of producer-director Oliver Stone, but he is in his own right a successful, sought-after producer, director, and Hollywood actor, starring in National Born Killers, Wall Street, as well as his feature film, which he produced and stars in, Greystone Park. He's the host of Off the Grid with his co-host, it's Jesse Ventura. Watching the Hawks. Oh, I got that wrong. I'm sorry. Watching the Hawks. And he also is the host of the critically acclaimed show Buzzsaw. Got that right. He is someone who is not afraid to speak the truth, as well as state his mind and beliefs clearly and passionately. He recently visited and shot a documentary in Iran, which changed his course and direction personally and emotionally. He's truly a man of depth, with a journey he will share with us from the images and perceptions that often shape our inner thoughts to Islamophobia and its definition in Hollywood, and to his journey to Iran and what it meant. Please help me to extend a warm welcome to our special guest for the 2015 Images and Perceptions Diversity Conference, Mr. Sean Stone.
I don't feel like a special guest. I've had such amazing people precede me on this platform that I just feel like I'm thankful that you guys stuck around to the end. You guys should get prizes just for being here at this hour. Thank you, Saham, for inviting me. Thank you all for coming and supporting the cause of diversity. You know, coming from a background, as you saw, I've always felt very diverse. And I think that's what I want to talk about today. People say, people ask me now, they say, oh, you're a Muslim, right? And ever since accepting Islam publicly, I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, you're a Muslim, oh, okay, or how long have you been a Muslim for? Or congratulations for accepting Islam, as though that's the true path of understanding. And yet, what is it to be a Muslim that's different from being a Christian, that's different from being a Jew, from being a Hindu, from being a Buddhist, from being someone who believes in the Creator? Are we not all created by the same mind? Are we not all created in the image of God, as it says in the Bible? The same Bible that the Quran is predicated in, that Muhammad comes to basically reteach the people who have forgotten the Old Testament, who have forgotten the teachings of Jesus Christ. Are these prophets not all mentioned in the Quran? So it's always been a question that I've kind of not wanted to address, because I feel when people ask me, oh, you're a Muslim, or they associate with me with being a Muslim, I felt, but you don't understand my whole point. When I went to Iran, I went 3 times. And the second time that I went there, I was basically having a conversation with my friends, and they said, well, why don't you accept Islam? I said, well, what does it mean to be a Muslim? They said, oh, well, to be a Muslim means that you accept Muhammad as prophet. I said, that's it? I said, yeah. So if I accept Muhammad as a prophet, I don't really take offense to the Quran. I find that it has most of the same teachings that are in the Old Testament, and a summation of some of the things in the New Testament, but pretty much it's closer to the Old Testament. It makes sense to me that Muhammad was a prophet in the same lineage, going back to Moses, Noah, Abraham. Yeah, okay, I accept Muhammad as a prophet. So does that mean that makes me a Muslim? Yeah, actually it does. Oh, this is interesting. So really, what you're saying is that your faith is the Judeo-Christian culture, because let's not forget how much Islam actually preserved many of the teachings of the Western world. They preserved the Greek philosophers, the Greek philosophers, going back to Aristotle and Plato. They preserved their works. They preserved their science. In fact, there was a tremendous Islamic Renaissance that took place, especially in Spain, for those who know of Cordoba, in Spain, for example, in this beautiful melting pot of the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim traditions coming together and sharing knowledge. The Prophet Muhammad said, seek knowledge, even if it takes you to China, to the Far East. Seek knowledge everywhere. Knowledge is supposed to be the key of Islam, as far as this curiosity. So, at the point that I was in Iran, then I said, okay, so being a Muslim just means you accept Muhammad as the last prophet in this lineage that everyone recognizes as we're part of, this Judeo-Christian lineage. And Muhammad has basically just come to reinforce those ideas to people that either didn't know them or perhaps had forgotten about them. Certain principles that, for example, are embodied in the Constitution of Medina, which no one talks about when they talk about Islam. The Constitution of Medina is one of the first democratic constitutions of the Western world. Although it's Arabia, so people in the West, because of this colonial mentality, don't consider that part of the Western world or Western culture, even though Judeo-Christianity then wouldn't be part of Western culture either, would it? Because that's the Middle East. So our tradition is actually based in the Middle East, our Western tradition. So the Constitution of Medina, that's actually this beautiful document, is given by Muhammad when he has control of Medina, and says, actually we recognize every religion's right to worship. Because in the Quran it says there's no compulsion in religion. And the Constitution of Medina then reinforces that and says, actually, whether you're Jewish, Christian, pagan, you have the right to worship. We're not going to force you. We're going to protect you. And if you don't want to fight to preserve the Islamic society, you don't have to. So there's certain, these kind of documents and texts that have been forgotten from our history because something occurred post, I think, really with the Crusades. That was the beginning of it. But it really got worse when the Spanish expelled the Jews and the Muslims both from Spain, 1492, don't forget. When basically the Jews and Muslims were both expelled from Spain, both had been mistreated during the Crusade conflicts. And then, really with the end of the Ottoman Empire in the early 20th century, the concept of the intelligent, noble Muslim tradition got transformed into that of the savage because it played into the colonial paradigm that needed to be implemented by the British and French empires, who now wanted to take the place of the Ottomans in ruling this region. So in order to do so, when they carved up these lands, and they gave Arabia to the Saudi family, and the French took Lebanon, Syria, and they gave Iraq to the king that was probably supposed to be on the throne of Arabia, and they completely screwed up the region. And then they created this country called Israel, and then Israel then became, well, larger than it was supposed to be at the founding, and wars then have been following since. But the point was that the colonial powers never wanted us in the West to see that these were our brothers in faith of the one God. Because you speak a different language, you can call it Jehovah, you can call it Allah, call it God, that which has no name. And they wanted to turn us against our brothers. And we've seen this throughout time. We see this in America, for example. It's what happened during slavery, when you had poor whites who were living in just as bad situations in the South as enslaved blacks. And the whole colonial mentality is, well, we have to turn you against the black man, because if you ever lied on the principles of economic discrimination and disparity, you would have overthrown the slave masters in a day. So we have to make you believe that there is the enmity of the other, who's darker skinned, who doesn't speak your language, who doesn't have your religion. And if he has your religion, then let's justify it and say, well, the black man is descended from Cain, in which case he deserves to be enslaved. So no matter how bad you have it as a white man who can't even afford to live, and you're probably in worse conditions sometimes than the slave, at least you're not black. And that's what they've created. You see, the colonial mindset is always designed to create the conflict and tension between peoples who ultimately are all enslaved, whether we're in America, whether we're in the Middle East, by these governments. These governments that are ultimately empowered by a financial elite, by a corporate elite, that makes profit off of your work and your labor. And rather than ever letting you ally and recognize our shared values, our shared desires, to ultimately be able to feed our families, to be able to create and love and have normal lives and relationships, we have to focus upon our differences, because that's how they maintain the power. So getting back to this question of, okay, Muhammad was the last prophet in this lineage, going back to Abraham, going back before that to Noah, going back to the first man, Adam. The same story here. Islam's story is the same as the story of the Jews, same as the stories of the Christians. There's minimal difference. Okay, I can accept Muhammad as prophet. That makes me a Muslim. But have I changed? Have I become some different person? Well, the media would like you to believe that. The fearmongers would like you to believe that. Now I must be some kind of jihadist. I must be some kind of fanatical. I must have been lost. I was lost, and now I found Islam, and now I've been saved. No, I just came to understand a different point of view. All the colors of the rainbow come from the same place. They all come from the same source. They just take different color. They take different forms, different frequency. Doesn't mean that they don't come from the same place. So, when I accepted Islam in Iran, I came back, and all of a sudden, I was, frankly, even before that, I'll explain to you that I did this very discreetly, and it was actually a big surprise to me, because when I accepted it, it was making a step that I didn't realize how big it was at the time, because I said, it makes sense, it's logical. I did it discreetly in Isfahan, in a small city in Iran. And next thing I know, the Reuters reporter is calling me saying, did you convert to Islam? I said, first of all, how do you know? Who's leaking to the press? Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. Now, it's becoming a story. I honestly didn't even perceive it. I don't understand why it was going to be such a big deal. But I took the opportunity, frankly, to go on Bill O'Reilly, to go on Piers Morgan. And many people would have said, well, that he was profiteering from, from converting to Islam to get some celebrity or press out of it. Like, look, it's probably better celebrity to have a sex tape come out in this day and age than to be seen as a Muslim. Talk about a satanic society, I don't know. I mean, no one criticizes you if you have a sex tape and you become a billionaire off of it, but if you accept Islam, it's like you're the devil. Morals have been reversed. But into this time frame when I came back from Iran, I said, okay, I'll do the Piers Morgan and the Bill O'Reilly because there's an important message that I have to state here about this unification, about this commonality of our religions, of our faith. And into this dialogue, all of a sudden they kept throwing at me, oh, but you met with Ahmadinejad in Iran. Oh, but Iran is the enemy, but you did it in Iran. They're so dangerous. And all of a sudden it was part of this whole geopolitical play that I realized. And I said, well, I don't think Iran is as much of a threat as you guys would like us to believe that they are. Well, it turns out that Ahmadinejad didn't nuke anybody, so I guess I was right on that front. And now the Obama administration is negotiating them, which is what I kept urging from the first place. I'm like, why am I the only person over here to talk to these people? Don't you think you're going to get further by having negotiation and dialogue and cultural exchange, economic exchange? Isn't that going to take you a lot further towards any kind of peace than isolation? So I guess I was 2 years ahead of my time in that sense of being over there. But it hasn't gotten better. Being a Muslim in America, in the film business, in Hollywood, I don't think it's gotten better from the point of view of the media. I mean, these statistics showing the amount of Americans who fear that Islam is an inherently violent religion is fascinating to me because you're in the most violent country in the world. I mean, literally, you're in the country that incarcerates the most people, that has the most I won't say the most street violence, but near the top in street violence. Mexico probably has more next door. You're in a country that literally has troops in 100+ countries around the world. You have actually an uncountable number of wars that are currently taking place at any time. Your whole culture is predicated in violence. Your whole history is predicated in violence, in usurpation, in conquest. And rather than recognizing that, you know what, maybe this isn't the best trajectory for America anymore, that we lost something perhaps after World War II when we were that great savior nation. And since then we've become a bit of a pariah in the eyes of the rest of the world. Rather than reflecting upon why that is and why we've decided to put all our money into wartime industries, and you look at our cities and they've been gutted of work, and there's no peacetime industries anymore that are invested in. There's no infrastructure that's invested in. There's no maglev rail system being built that could be built out of this city here in Detroit as we speak. Instead, Detroit, which is bankrupt, is being left to bankruptcy and saying, oh, they'll gentrify it. They'll bring in some condos and some, maybe some internet money. And once the whites come in, it'll be fine. That's the mentality. As opposed to saying, hey, we've got this tremendous industry of people and machine tool factories and this history of production that could be put to use in building rail, high-speed rail, that China has, that Japan has, that Europe has, and America, who was the originator of all of this with our Trans-Pacific Rail construction in the 19th century. We were the innovators of these science and technology initiatives, and now we're being left behind because we can't compete with the rest of the world. You're being lied to. But they keep lying to you because the point is the power structure is making making a killing off of this wartime industry of missiles and death. And if you're building missiles, you have to shoot them at somebody. So who is that somebody today? Today it's the terrorists. I grew up during the Cold War still. I remember when it was narco-terrorism, and there were the communists, and there were the socialist movements. You see, all these different enemies that have to be created rather than ever letting you as Americans focus on making America great again. Because America can't be great as long as we're pointing missiles and blowing people up. All we're doing is creating enemies, creating fear, perpetuating it, creating hatred. We have to bring ourselves back as a people to this place of oneness, and it begins within ourselves. It's a very difficult experience to explain, but perhaps the most spiritual, I think if you compare spiritual experiences across the world, you'll find that there is this transcendent moment that religion is a part of, and yet spirituality transcends. I know I felt it in certain moments. For example, when I was in Iran, we were having prayer and a chant around the Ashura ceremonies, and many Shia Muslims will understand what that means. The Ashura ceremonies are when we pay homage to the fallen children of the Prophet Muhammad, his grandchildren, Hussein and Hassan. The concept, I'll just mention that many people like to attack Shia Islam as treating Hussein, Ali, and this lineage of Muhammad as being equal to God or equal to the Prophet Muhammad. And it's not about that to me. Perhaps there are extremes, but to me, Shia Islam is remembering those who sacrificed themselves to maintain that which was essential to Islam. Because Islam means submission to God's will. And the spirituality that Islam offers is there for those who seek it, the same way the spirituality of Christianity is there, and Judaism it's there. But sometimes they're more hidden traditions. Sometimes they're more secret because you have to find it for yourself. You have to be willing to go there and seek it within yourself. That hidden tradition is the oneness of all being. It's the oneness that exists within you, so that when you look inside yourself, you realize, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Jew, I'm not an American, I'm not this, I'm not that. I am all things. And in these rituals, in these ceremonies sometimes, in the chant, in the prayer, in the moment of connection to that oneness, you start to see it and realize it. Because as long as we use these labels, there are ways of dividing us from each other. And it doesn't matter if I say I'm American, but if I'm American, my tradition, I'm also Irish, I'm also French, I'm also Russian. And then where before that? And my sister, she's half Korean. You know, and my brother is adopted, but he's Italian. And and you keep going into this, but my best friend is black, and whatever it is, it's like you keep going into this notion of, but these are all part of me too. These people are all part of me as well. And we start getting into this moment of oneness, which is within us, when we recognize it. And then we start to go from that moment, realizing all the evils of the world and all the greatness of the world is also within each one of us. It's a question of where we put our emphasis. First and foremost, we have to recognize it. We cannot sit there and be the judge and the Lord of others, as so many people would like to be. They would like to be the chief executioner, the chief commander, and tell you, well, he's right and he's wrong. He lives and he dies. We can get there, very few of us perhaps should get such a position of power, because first and foremost, before getting to that position, you have to recognize in yourself, if I were in his shoes, would I have done the same thing? Would I see the world the way he does? This is the mission of the artist. This is why the artist's path and job in this world is so important now, perhaps more so than ever. We have to play the role of diplomats. We have to play the role of politicians, because we're the ones who are going to those places in the mind to empathize with the other, to see the world from their point of view. Because only when you see it from the other person's point of view can you start to actually rationalize and talk to that person. Can you actually start to convince anyone away from that position? But first you have to be willing to go there. And when we go there, it's a dangerous place. You can get lost, certainly. I don't feel that my path is anywhere near conclusion. I think my path is evolving. I'm very excited about the fact that I'm at the beginning of my career, but I come from a place that I believe in the oneness of all people, of all things, from the one creation, from the one source. And from that position, I think there's an opportunity for me to create. And I think if everyone recognizes that oneness within themselves, that from where they come from, being the one source, then each and every person has the ability to connect, to empathize, and to start to create a better future. That's really where I believe our strength is going to come from. So I want to open it up a little bit to questions and not talk too much, because I much prefer conversation and hearing what you guys are thinking or wondering or curious about.
Ali, when do you expect to get blacklisted in Hollywood?
So he asked when I expect to get blacklisted in Hollywood.
Never.
Speaking of the difficulty of being Muslim in Hollywood, I'll give you an example. A very good friend of mine, who actually is from your community here in Michigan, I won't say his name, but he told me about an encounter he had recently with an old friend of his, who's an older Jewish agent who's been in the Hollywood business for his whole life, right? And these two have known each other for 10 years. And my friend, who's a Lebanese Muslim, but doesn't necessarily look Muslim, he looks, he's a Lebanese guy, but you wouldn't know. They were speaking, and in the course of the conversation, the older agent looked at him and said, "Are you Muslim?" And my friend said, "Yes, I thought you knew that." And he said the surprise on the older agent's face shocked him. It was a moment of complete fear, confusion. And it doesn't even matter the fact that they had been friends that long. There's, right now, in Hollywood, this complete paranoia, because it's the media paranoia. You see, it's the media game of where's the flow of conformity going? You see, there's very few risk takers in Hollywood. Few risk takers, few willing to break the rules. The majority are trying to figure out, okay, what's popular? American Sniper? Great, let's go shoot Iraqis. Awesome, that can make $300 million. We're good. A movie that would, for example, show Muslims in a sympathetic light, okay, as long as they're not the main character. A movie with Muslims in the main portrayal, they better be working with the Homeland Security. You see, we have this system of power that I've talked about in Hollywood, the same way that we have it in our economic system. It's a power that reinforces itself, that works hand in hand. The Hollywood system is predicated on the finances of Wall Street. There's no way you have Hollywood without Wall Street, without the establishment, let's say. And so as long as we need these wars to continue in the Middle East, there has to be a certain level of fear that's in the population's mind about these raghead Taliban guys who yell Allah Akbar and blow you up. If we can change that mentality, it's going to have to start with organizations like this. It's going to have to start with people who are wise enough and hopefully ready to just change it on their own, let's say. The young people, the people who are regular every day, who work with Muslims, the ones who work with people of all ethnic groups, right? To say, there's something wrong here. And as a result of them saying there's something wrong, they'll turn off the TV. I mean, that's really what I hope for more than anything, is that people just turn off these programs. We do this show on RT that Saham mentioned called Watching the Hawks, which is a young person's take on news commentary. And that's one, hopefully one step forward, a show like that, but not enough people watch RT. We don't even know what RT is, Russia Today. They don't even know that this network exists, because CNN and Fox News and MSNBC are still the dictators of our lives. And the only thing we can do in that case is shut the TV off, stop giving in to that fear and that phobia, stop listening to the politicians. because they're paid liars, and if you haven't figured that out in your years of existence, then I don't know what you're doing here.
First of all, I want to say I'm honored to have met you. I'm very proud that you're among us here tonight. Thank you for coming. What advice would you give to young people who are of the Muslim faith, growing up in this society and being bombarded by such negativism in terms of the propaganda about Islam, who are starting to feel not so very proud of who they are? What advice, what can you tell them?
She's asking, how do you advise young people who are growing up as Muslims in America, who are a bit sensitive or fearful of their of perhaps the way that they're perceived? I think that's the most important thing. I mean, I can't speak directly to that because I wasn't raised as a Muslim. I'm not. Also, I mean, let's be honest. If you're a white kid growing up, and you're Muslim, as a boy, who would ever know it? If you're brown-skinned, as the police officers were speaking of before, if you're Lebanese, and you're Christian, and you're Arab, people will still think you're Muslim, right? So this perhaps plays into the whole notion of the stereotype question. I think the most important thing is just to educate people in Islam, to make them go to a mosque at some point in their high school education. I know that in our school, we actually had to. We had to, at one point, go to, we had to study the Old Testament and the New Testament. I wish we had studied the Quran as well. But at one point we had to we were taken on a class field trip to a mosque. We were taken to a temple and a church or something to that effect. But I know we went to the mosque. And so at least we had some interaction with Muslims. Because it's not a given when you're growing up, obviously, that you're going to interact. Thankfully, in a community like this, I think it's quite common that the diversity is such that you will interact across religions at a young point, at a young age. But again, it's very difficult to get into to address, I think all the fears and questions of a young person. I think that would be a good dialogue to have, and I'd love to hear it more from a young person in terms of what they're experiencing. But on the whole, again, to me, it goes back to this whole question of, we're at a time in America that's not blossoming. Remember, being Muslim before 9/11 was not a big deal for Americans. Post 9/11, we say it has to do with the terrorism factor, but I would also argue it has to do with the economic factor. That we still had some semblance of an economy pre-2001. Post-2001, 2008 made it pretty clear. We're a moment away from collapse. 2008 was the moment when people realized just how close we are, just how close to the edge we are. And people are now living with that fear on a daily basis. And the problem is that when you have these kind of conditions of economic insecurity, those kind of real factors play in to the phobias. They play into our racisms. It's the same thing with, Mexican immigrants. Well, if we were a booming country, if we were building, if we were growing, we've always absorbed immigrants. It's always been tough for immigrants. I'm not going to argue it's not tough for immigrants, but we've always absorbed it. And now, why are we trying to shut them out? Because our economy's collapsing, because we're not hiring, because we're shutting down our jobs, we're sending them abroad. So in those conditions, racism, phobias, xenophobias, they all increase.
I want to say to Sean and to Michael, really, how proud I am of both of you. I think you're brilliant and you're social justice advocates. And my question to you is, if you had a magic wand and you were granted three wishes that would change the world significantly relative to diversity and inclusion, what three things would you do to bring about a significant change in our accepting and celebrating diversity and inclusion? Three wishes.
Can I get a glass of water?
He's stalling. He's got to take some time, but I'll get you water.
you know, you think of the good times in life in a country like America. And I think what Michael Reyes was saying earlier was interesting, that, you know, the good old times weren't good for everybody, right? And yet, when there's a sense of hope in society, the sense that, you know, that your industries that you're working, your production is up, your economy is alive. You're living with an overall energy of goodwill. So, to me, I think one of the essential changes, as I mentioned before, is this whole notion of economic investment in our domestic markets, in our peacetime industries. Because you look at cities like Detroit, where, again, you could have blacks, Muslim Arabs, white Christians, all these people working side by side, for example, in factories. You know, when I was working labor, I worked construction in New York, and it was a great experience because you had Puerto Ricans, Italians, you know, Italian-American descendants, Irish guys. You know, they'd all been there, and a lot of them had been generational, you know, labor workers. And they all worked together, and of course, you know, and black guys too. And it was 4 or 5 different ethnic groups all working together, and you had this camaraderie that, you know, you were building something, you were working on something. You had beers together. That's how this country became great. That's how we absorbed all these different groups. And it was, you know, and again, it's always been a tough thing. No one's ever going to say it wasn't tough. You know, it was tough being an Italian kid at one point. It was tough being an Irish kid at one point, right, in our history. So hopefully, you know, being Muslim now is just a phase of absorbing in the foreign, you know, and perhaps we'll get to that stage soon where it's like first you have to confront the other, and then eventually you absorb the other into yourself. Maybe that's what America's doing psychically. But for me, I think one of the things I would do is certainly push peacetime investment, peacetime growth, have people working. You got to build your markets at home. You have to look to your workers as your consumers, because Henry Ford had that mentality, and that's how this country was built. The fact was that he didn't say that like an investment banker would say, you know, I want to pay these people as close to slavery as possible, right? The free market mentality of Adam Smith figured out the problem with slavery real quick. Adam Smith said, wait a minute, you guys are going to house them, feed them, clothe them, and take care of their health? That's socialism. No, we're going to give them $1 and let them figure it out for themselves. And that's what free market capitalism has been about, right? So if we go back to this notion again of the Henry Ford concept, I want my workers to make $5 a day. Now granted, not $5 a day now, $5 a day in 1905, so that they can become the consumers, so they can buy the cars. That's a good business strategy. You want people to make money in America so that they can then buy products in America. Not, we want to pay you guys as little as possible and give you credit cards that you can never pay off. That's a banking mentality. And that's what you have. So for me, I think number one is, again, investment at home, bringing industries back, bringing people together, because when industries are going, people are working together. Cities are necessary. Our cities are collapsing. Cities are the melting pot of all cultures, of all people. It's exciting when you're in a city, right? You meet people from all over the world. You get restaurants and foods from all over the world. If our cities are collapsing, people are going to their suburbs, they're going into their towns, they're insulated, they're more fearful, they don't like strangers as much in small towns. They can be friendly, but let's be honest, it's not as welcoming as a city is. And cities are tough, but no matter where you come from, you can blend into a city. So I think those are 2 key aspects. The third, this religious nonsense has to stop. We have to get beyond our phobias around religion and the fact of my religion being superior to your religion. In the day, it's the same superiority we have about ourselves. I'm better than you. You're better than him. He's better than him. We are all nothing except what God allows us to be. We are all created by God to serve a purpose in this universe. So your relationship to God is going to be different than my relationship to God, than his. And there should be no compulsion. There should be no ultimately, criticism or hatred because of the way that you worship your God and that you interact with your God, that should not ultimately, affect me. If it affects me insofar as you murder or steal beyond trying to save your family or something to that effect, I mean, we're talking about real theft, real, rape or things like this that we can all agree upon, of course. But beyond that, your relationship to God, no one should talk about. So I think those are the 3 points that I think would help the most in terms of bringing people to get beyond our current, let's say, discriminatory or stereotypical mentalities. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much for this great lecture. I just want to tell you some people who are intelligent and smart like you, some of them, they lost the way. And some of them, especially political people who are smart and intelligent, they use their smartness like they put the poison in the honey for their aim, for how they were to reach. But what kind of upbringing that make you this kind of person who are so great?
I can't repeat the question. It's sensitive. No, she.
I have to repeat the question. The question was, so many people use their intelligence and poise, and I love the way you put it, putting poison in honey and being camouflaged. But I wanted to know how he became so poised and so intelligent and using what he knows in the right direction.
Thank you.
Okay. All credit to my parents. No, again, my father is half Jewish, half Catholic. He's an atheist at this point, if you ask him. And he practices Buddhism. I think that's his great struggle in his life, is learning patience and learning mastery over himself. So he's on his spiritual path. And in the course of his spiritual journey, he introduced me to meditation and the third eye, many Eastern traditions along the way. We went to Tibet, places like this, to, at that point, bore the hell out of me. At 10 years old, I was miserable. But in hindsight, to really open me up to more of a spiritual understanding. And again, this goes back to the notion of what we are as human beings, because I don't believe that we're just physical matter. I see us as spiritual entities, energetic bodies. And each of us has a relation to the higher power, and it's a question of getting there. It's a question of your journey and where it takes you. So my father taught that path. My mother, Christian, never really practiced, took me to church, Christmas Day kind of thing. She would oftentimes take me to the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is an amazing group in LA that basically offers a place to recognize and worship all religions. And so they offer you the teachings of each of the religions, each of the faiths. So you can go and you can listen, and again, you can find that which is the oneness of our faiths, of our being as people. And so I think those were two very important things in my life, and then beyond that, I've always been curious, because I mentioned earlier that, as artists, we're constantly out there expanding, growing, because we realize my experience in my life is very limited. It's my own being. It's my own time. I've been here 30 years. You've been here for your period of time. You have a limited experience of reality. Every single person in here has a limited experience of reality. That's our own experience of life. And so I've always felt, isn't it more interesting to be curious and want to find out more and open your ears and your eyes and listen and learn and want to read and want to travel and want to see and explore? Isn't that a more exciting life than sitting there taking your little experience and saying, this is the way it is? And I think that's really what it boils down to, is that the mentality that's open and willing to actually go beyond yourself and your finite time here to say, I'm going to keep expanding and exploring and testing, because that's how we find our boundaries. That's how we find what works for us. That's how we find what makes us hopefully better people.
Before I ask my question, I just want to tell you I'm so impressed. It's hard to believe you're only 30 years old.
Thank you.
Because you sound like a wise man in his 70s. My question is, how much has that hurt, your choices hurt your career? Jeez. And do you regret, or do you say, what have I done to myself sometimes?
You can never look back. Again, if you believe that this world is just finite matter and it's running out of time, then perhaps I'm doomed. But I don't believe that. And so I think everything that I've done, I believe, has been guided by a higher place and ultimately speaks to my truth. And if I can attain my truth and my sense of, vision and hopefully connection to God and the source and the oneness, then nothing is wasted, because that's what's guiding it. So I can't say where it's going to lead or how it may have affected my career or my life this way or that way, but I can say that I have faith that it's guiding me to my destiny, and that whatever that destiny is, it won't end when my life runs out. So if I live that way, then no matter what happens here, it'll be okay. Sure.
I know they'll all want to meet with you, but you're not familiar with that at all, probably. Yeah.
That's her way of getting your address.
Thank you. But yeah, let me, no, I'd love to get it later.
I wanted to call the other speakers up too, if anyone had any questions and answers. Well, you had the questions, I'm hoping they have the answers. David, Maxine, Martha, can you come on up? And Sean will still be here too.
Whoever's left.
Awesome. 30 years old. I think you're almost at self-actualization. You see what I'm just trying to
Does anybody have any questions for any of the speakers?
I have a follow-up from everything. So we sat here all day, listened to these magnificent
And ate a whole lot of food.
Where do we go from here? Because again, this is wonderful, but we could be a messenger. If you have one message for us to give to the word outside, what each one of us, what one thing each one of us could do in the next day or so to basically impact.
Maybe each of you can take that.
If I may just be the first to answer that question, one of the things that I think we've tried to emphasize is education. Read your Quran. Read your books of religious studies and know exactly where his heart is. You'll know he's discovering religion. And I have too. I've even gone as far as to read and get involved with Amelia Earhart's son's Est, which I think was the most horrible thing I ever did, because one of the meetings I was at, they said, this guy stood up and said, both my parents just died in a car accident and it doesn't bother me. So I got up and I left immediately. Cybernetics, I didn't want to be that non-feeling and non-thinking. So it's all about read your word. The word is life. It's the truth in the life, the light that you need to carry on with your lives. So read, study to improve yourself. A workman, not afraid to tell the world who you love, God.
I would say be the change that you want to be. Okay, be a role model. Be a role model. People are listening to you and watching you and you don't even know it. So use your words to build people up. Use your actions to serve as a role model for other people. Stand up and speak out when you see some social injustices happening in the world. Take care of your own body and love yourself to a greater degree. And realize that life is short. Here today and gone tomorrow. And wake up every day and thank whoever you believe in that you are still on this side of the dirt.
I just want to say something because I'm standing next to the popo. I want you to know that everything you said today was very, very helpful and it was substantial in our present situation. I heard a sermon, and it's one of the main scriptures was that a soft answer avoids wrath. If our youngsters could be told at home that policemen have a job to do, and when somebody approaches you, at least follow orders. Sometimes I think that the rap generation, with all the profanity that just flies out without any kind of consideration to who's listening, has a lot to do with the personalities and the actions of our youth. A lot of them don't care about God, they don't care about their mothers and fathers, and they care less about the police department. But if somebody mess with me, I'm calling the po-po. Right now. Because I don't bother nobody. I got robbed and didn't know I was going to get robbed because I didn't have nothing. They stole my purse anyway. But I'm calling the po-po. And I want you to know that I love the police department. I don't have none in my family, but I love the fact that you are there when we need you. And I love the fact that you're human beings and you just have a job to do. We all have jobs to do. And we should try to do them the best we can. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
I would say the impact you can make is your sphere of influence. Some people make decisions to be on podiums and speak, like some of the speakers today. Some people are artists and become public. And our sphere of influence is a little bit larger, but all of us have a sphere of influence, right? We all have a space.
I'm still in that.
We all have a space where we can make an impact. And I would say that one of the things is that, you know, each of us has a role to play and it's just as important. And so our sphere of influence could be, some people might just be their children, it might be their cousin, their family. Other people, it might be your neighborhood, your block, it might be your school or your church. And then at higher levels, it might be your community. And one thing is that, you know, communities really matter. Communities, for me, the more that we have a sphere of influence in each of our communities, the more we can make a direct impact. And if you have pockets of resistance all over, and even now, one thing is that we get to hear all these problems. But for me, fortunately, I get to travel around the country, and I can tell you everywhere, in every community, in every space I've ever been to, there are people that are struggling, that are resisting, that are organizing, that are battling, and that are confronting a lot of the issues that we talked about, whether it's racism or colonialism, some of the topics that we were able to mix up today, and not to lose focus on that. That even if we don't see that on regular CNN or all these other news stations, that there are spaces of resistance that still exist, and so our sphere of influence is just as important. So,
Amen. Go ahead.
I think these people have summarized my main points, one of which I think is respect is so important, that people don't treat each other with respect enough. And it's just a really simple thing to do on a daily basis. Because if you approach others with respect, usually they will reciprocate. So I think this is one thing that we need to be more aware of. It's just our basic behavior towards each other as human beings. Recognizing, look, someone may be stressed out, don't hold it against them. You know, understand where people are coming from. Always trying to be aware of that point that you may be coming from a great place, someone else might be coming from a horrible place at the moment. At least have empathy for that. So respect is important. Speaking your mind is so important. Why we have to be afraid of what people think about us. You know, most of the time, we are coming from a position of being so self-conscious, in a sense, of what the society thinks and what the pulse is and what's popular, that we can't think for ourselves. We have to listen to the music that our friends are listening to. And it begins in high school, you know. Music, dress, behavior, drugs, alcohol, you name it. It becomes a pattern. And it carries on the rest of our lives, unless you can check it and say, you know what, I don't like that. That's not what I'm about. Figure out what you're about. Speak your mind. Speak your truth. Be willing to be different. Because if the culture can change, it's only because of the difference maker, the ones who are different. It's not the conformists that change the culture. You know, it's the ones who are different that change it. So I would encourage that first, you know, as the most important thing you can do going forward. And then, you know, also just, as she said, when you see something that's wrong, be willing to be outspoken about it. We have been too long kowtowing to power. You know, I love the fact that, you know, the commander here can basically speak as a human being, as opposed to traditionally, in a situation like this, we would be giving all reverence to the police officer only because of his gun and his uniform, right? And the point is, no, he's a human being. And I think that's the beauty, I think, of the awareness of where we're coming from now as people, is to say, look, he's a human being with a job.
Yes.
And some can make big mistakes and be bad cops, some are good cops. But we're breaking down these stereotypes. The military guy, he's always good, the good guy. You know, he's always G.I. Joe. The officer's always right. And even though we have a lot of experiences that prove otherwise. And so as a result, you end up with a schizophrenic society, as opposed to just realizing, look, just because you're in a position of power does not make you better than me. No, you're here as a human being, I'm here as a human being. Let's respect each other as human beings. And if we're seeing people in bureaucracies that are empowered and taking that to extremes and to abuses, we need to be willing to call that out and more call them to account. Because at the end of the day, we are all serving each other. This government is by the people, for the people. It's not of those who are in position to give us the breadcrumbs to survive. No. You're there because of us, and we respect you for it. So I think that's the most important breakthrough of where we're heading as a society, is to be able to call out the abuses, to videotape them, to show, at whatever aspect of society it's taking place, we're not going to kowtow anymore to those who are in position, because they're humans just like us.
He's been here before.
Terry, the question is extremely valuable, because we come here, we spend a lot of our personal time and work time here trying to learn something from. I can't even believe I'm on a stage with people like this. It's humbling, and I'm in awe, actually. But what I would suggest that you do is you go home and you look in that mirror, the mirror that Maxine talked about. Look at that and take assessment of yourself. Look at yourself and understand that your beliefs, the way you were raised, your life experiences made who you are. Accept that. Flaws included. But what you have to do is, like they brought up, when you see things that are wrong, not only just stand up for what you believe is right, take the initiative to start that counter narrative where you actually go and you talk to the people that you don't understand. Because when you go and you talk to the people you don't understand, do so with an open mind. Do so with an open heart. Understanding that, you know what, they're exactly like you on the inside. We all want to be loved. We all want to be cared for. We all want to be complimented. We all want to be accepted and included. This is the ground floor of, and when you go in there with that feeling and you hear what they have to say, you might grow. And I want you all to grow today.
This is Reyes from ReyesPoetry.com, and today we did an event on diversity. It was the Image and Perceptions Conference on Diversity here in Dearborn. A lot of surrounding Detroit folks. For me, it was a good experience. You know, I got to see Martha from Martha and the Vandells, which was an amazing Motown group, and it was awesome to see her reflection about her time when she couldn't actually stay in the hotels, and it was a really interesting kind of experience to see her experience as a Motown artist and during segregation. Also, you know, being able to see Sean Stone talk about his acceptance of Islam, and there was a lot of different diverse stories from folks bringing a lot to the table. And for me, in my own experience as a Chicano, as a Mexican, as somebody who is inspired and moved by social justice, the message I wanted to share was really just about being able to be a creator of culture, a creator of identity, of being able to share and use our sphere of influence in a positive way. When we think about issues of social justice, issues of racism, sexism, homophobia, a lot of times we get stuck with the problem and we're not able to really talk about the solution. And today was a really great space to be able to create dialogue about solutions. And so if I left you with anything, I would hope with the conference is that we're out there, folks are out there doing work around creating solutions, creating not only conversation about diversity, but creating conversations about real social change.
Hi, I'm Sean Stone. I'm here at the 12th Annual Diversity Conference here in Dearborn, Michigan, having a fantastic day. We've had tremendous speakers, Martha Reeves amongst them. And so I got to speak myself regarding my understanding of Islam and how really it ties into the Judeo-Christian tradition of religions, and how ultimately we have to transcend our stereotypes and our understandings perhaps that are limited of what religions mean to get to the essential spiritual oneness that unites all of us as human beings. So that was the message that I came to deliver, and I really appreciate Dearborn hosting me and this event. This is Sean Stone with Middle Eastern American TV and Radio. So thank you guys for watching.